Hello, welcome to Module D. And this module we're skipping over to a chapter that's in the back of the book. Okay, we will go back and cover many of the other chapters. But what I want to do this week and next week is discuss a little bit about the consumers, the theory of consumers, how people make decisions, and to some degree where demand functions come from and things like that. Okay, it is essentially the theory of the consumer. So in our book, we have gone, I believe it's chapter 21, that is in the back of the book, and I'm introducing a couple different concepts. First thing, what I want to do is remind everybody of one of the major tenets that economists believe. And economists believe more is better than less. You can always do more with better. You're happier if you have more of stuff, right? The more stuff, the better. I assume it probably was an economist who was driving in front of me with a bumper sticker that I still remember. And the bumper sticker said, "He who dies with the most toys wins." Okay? The more stuff you accumulate, the better. Okay, now there may be folks in Rhodes Hall and in other professions other than economists who may step back and you say, you know what, material wealth isn't actually what makes people happy, which is fine. But we're in an economics class, and as an economist, we will continue this idea that more is better. Having 3 bags of gummy bears is better than 2. Having 2 is better than 1. Having 1 is better than 0. Forget for the moment that after I eat the 3rd gummy bear bag, okay, I know that my stomach is going to feel awful, but you know what? It was worth it. I just am a gummy bear addict, and that's it. The more, the better, right? Now, there's a few things that we get from here, okay, that, maybe more is better. But you know what? The difference between the 3rd and the 4th isn't as big as not having any and having 1 bag. So the first bag of gummy bears is worth more to me than going from a 3rd bag to a 4th bag. Yeah, that's legitimate, right? But we strongly believe 4 is better than 3. 3 is better than 2, and so on and so forth. And this comes from a corollary that we have adopted, and we believe that there is such a thing as free disposal, which means if you don't want it, you can throw it in the trash, or if you don't want it, you can donate it to the charity of your choice. Okay? When I am buying electric wire, there's a 250-foot roll, and there is a 50-foot roll. The 250-foot roll is more than I need. I may have been able to get away with the 51, but if the price isn't that much higher, I'm going to buy the 251 because it allows me to make more mistakes, right? And at the end of the day, anything that I'm not using, let's say I have a 50 foot or even maybe 200 feet left over of wire, the folks at Habitat for Humanity are more than happy to take it and put it in their resale store so I can donate it. More is always better than less. Okay, that's key, one of the key things. So what we're going to do in this section is we're going to talk about indifference curves. Because there's more than one way to make someone happy. Now, as you may have heard from me, eating gummy bears is definitely a way that you can make Professor Schumann happy, right? But there are other things as well. Jello, Okay. Most things sugary, right? Hockey equipment. Oh, there's a whole bunch of stuff, right? Now, we live in a world of trade-offs. And as a consumer, we can't have everything we want. We live in a budget constraint. There's certain stuff we have, uh, potentially a certain amount of money, a budget, a job with a certain salary, or we have a farm and we have a certain amount of goods, apples and raspberries and things that potatoes that we have. Okay, and can't have infinite amounts of everything. So all of us live in a budget. All right. So what we and everybody else does as a consumer is try to get the most happiness we can off of our budget constraint we have. So what I'm going to draw behind me here is uh, a series of lines. Each one is illustrative of a certain level of happiness. And what we're going to do is draw these indifference curves. Okay? And we're going to have multiple indifference curves. Some of them you're happier with, and some you weren't. Okay? So we just theoretically draw these lines, and they look something along these lines. Gummy bears on one side. Okay, I hope you guys can see this. I might shift to a different color. Jello on the other, right? And what we can do is we can draw a line. It looks usually something along those lines, something that looks like that, which are the indifference curves, which means that at every point on this chart, on this line, we have the same level of happiness. Okay? So I could be over here with a lot of gummy bears and very little Jello, or I could be up here with quite a amount of Jello, but only a few gummy bears. Okay, jelly beans is an entirely different lecture. Okay. So what we can do is create a line like this that gives us the equal amount of happiness that we would have at that point with different combinations. Because Jello makes me happy, gummy bears make me happy. So I can create this line, which we call the indifference curve. I am indifferent about where I am on that line, right? Now, we had mentioned earlier that the more we have, the better. So if we were right here, this point right there, okay, would not be on the same indifference curve because I have more of both gummy bears and Jello. What's better than that, right? So we could draw another line of all the points that would give me that level of happiness. Furthermore, I have another line. Okay. The higher up I go in that direction, okay, the happier I get. My goal is to get on that line that gives me the most level of happiness, right? Now, there's a few different things on here. We know that the more, the better. More is better than less, which means this point here cannot be on the same indifference curve as that because more is better. Better is more happy, right? And one of the things that this tells us is that what we cannot see is we cannot see two lines that ever cross. Why? Because what this means is point 1 would be equal in terms of happiness to point 2, which would be on this green line, which would mean that you're happy, the same happiness as it's 3, and in line 3, you've got to be happier because you got more of both, right? So that means that this thing could never have happened, right? So when we look at the indifference curves, they can basically be of shapes that can move back, and that you can have them have a lot of different dimensions, but they typically will curve like this, and we know that they will never cross their level of happiness, right? I'm going to get rid of this green line, because we know that that couldn't have been one of them. And then one of the things you're going to run across is what you can possibly buy, right? And what you can possibly buy can be illustrated by a budget line. You could afford anything in this area. Right. Well, which one would you want to be on? Well, ideally you'd want to be on one of the red lines, except the problem is what? The red lines are outside of your budget line. Okay. You could be here, at which point you'd be on this indifference curve, but why would you be at that point if you could afford this spot? If you could afford the black, okay, you can afford the black, you can have the black level of happiness. Why would you be happy with the red level of happiness if your budget constraint would let you buy a spot that talks on the black? So what we will always have is that the budget line is going to just touch the highest indifference curve. Because if ever you were like this and it was crossing, or the black crossed over here, you wouldn't buy here, you would move up, right? Okay, because you could afford it and you get better. So we know that you're going to be tangent, that the affordability line here, which is affordable, is going to be tangent to the happiness curve. Okay? And you won't be in a position, you won't ever be in something that's like that. Now in this chapter, we're going to talk about a whole bunch of stuff, like what happens when the budget line changes. The budget line could shift. Hey, I got good news. I got a raise. So given the prices being what they are, I got a raise, which means I could now afford to get more gummy bears or more Jell-O or both, right? So we can shift, see what happens when we shift the income line. The other thing that can happen is I could be down here on this budget line and I could find out that Jell-O has gotten more expensive. If Jell-O has gotten more expensive, I can't buy as much Jell-O as I could before. And what might have happened is my affordability stuff went down, and I no longer afford to be able to buy that. I'm going to have to buy something that I can afford. And because of inflation in a particular product, okay, my happiness is going to change. And if my happiness changes because prices have changed, okay, my choice of what to buy with my limited dollars will have changed. Right? Okay, and we basically are assuming that we can take our money, divide by whatever the cost is of gummy bears, tells us what we could have afforded on the gummy bears. If we take our income divided by the cost of Jell-O, we could figure out what that is. Right? So these are the types of things that we're going to discuss in this chapter. And from that, we're going to learn some interesting things about consumer behavior. I hope you enjoy this class, this section. Okay, there is only one chapter. I have included a document from the University of Minnesota that I think actually does a reasonably good job of explaining this. So between our book and the University of Minnesota chapter, I think you should be able to kind of figure this out. But we are only doing one chapter here, so it's going to be a small module in terms of the number of chapters, but it is a relatively intense chapter compared with some of the others. So anyways, we will have this up until next week, and then throughout the week I am going to come back to you middle of next week, actually probably a little toward the end, and I'm going to give you an example of something that is really, I think, really cool, okay, which is the Edgeworth box. It is something that's not in your text, but is kind of an extreme example of how you can use this theory to come up with a really advanced economic concept that talks about how consumers' behavior dictates what the relative prices are and what possible economic trades are possible, okay, in an economy consisting of two people with limited goods in both in this case, a limited amount of jelly beans, gummy bears. I've got jelly beans on my mind, gummy bears, and limited amount of Jell-O, right? And then how things will change. Anyways, well, that's for later. But I'm going to have come back with another video. It's going to be toward the end of this session, end of this module, because it kind of will assume that you have done the homework and you understand most of the concepts, because it's more of a graduate level concept, graduate level class concept. But I think it's cool, so I want to present it. All right. Anyways, hope you'll enjoy this section, and we'll be back to you midweek, and I will probably make the tests available sometime Thursday next week, but not have it due until after spring break. So some of you may decide, you know what, I want to get this thing out of the way and get it done. And others may say, you know what, I'm going to wait until we come back from spring break and then take the test. Other thing, I had someone in the hallway stop me and say, hey, Professor, you haven't graded the homeworks. Yeah, because basically, well, what I grade on the homeworks on is whether you did them or not. Okay, so I have gone in and you will have seen that if you did your homeworks, you will have gotten a 1 and a 1 point because you did the homeworks. If you didn't do the homework, you will end up having it blank or a 0, right? So go do the homeworks, right? And it makes sense to do the homeworks before you take the quizzes. And there are a few of you who have kind of been so-so about getting your homeworks done. Get them done. Might as well get them done. All right. With that, we will see everybody. I hope you enjoy this module. We'll see everybody later. Bye-bye.